Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do in this next half hour is to introduce you to the proof of principle study. And this is where we're testing out some ideas about personalised nutrition. And I'm going to start off with making the important point that's been made already this morning, that we're all about trying to achieve behaviour change. This is the whole purpose of personalised nutrition. And what we'd like to ensure is that whatever we offer produces sustained behaviour change. So the big question is, if we had some personalised nutrition offering, would it produce bigger, more appropriate, more sustained behaviour change? And would that result in bigger gains in health and well-being than can be achieved by the conventional approach? So at the moment we've got a one-size-fits-all approach. We're thinking about personalised nutrition, but we don't know yet whether the personalised nutrition would be better. So within work package 4 in Food for Me, we're asking, is it possible to deliver personalised nutrition, and is it effective in achieving behaviour change? So if we have personalisation in the way that Mike described, operating at different levels, is that more effective than general healthy eating guidelines? What's the best basis for personalisation? And if we offer people more feedback, do we get more compliance and greater behaviour change? And importantly, we're asking, can we do this through the internet? Is that a successful delivery platform for personalised nutrition? So the proof of principle study is operating across 7 countries. So it's in Ireland, the Netherlands, Spain, UK, Poland, Greece, and Germany. And with that, we get some diversity of European experience. So we'll see what works in different places. And what we're doing is a scientific study, a randomized controlled trial. So this will help to provide that scientific underpinning for all the sort of things that Yo was talking about in the business models and so on, because we'll know what the evidence is. We're doing a study in adults, and our plan is to recruit 1,540 people, which will allow us 20% dropout, and we'll still end up with the 1,280 that Mike referred to earlier. And because we're interested in sustainability, we want to know whether the intervention has effects 6 months down the line. We know perfectly well you can persuade people to make small changes over short time frames. Give me enough advice and I might change things today, and maybe tomorrow I'm doing the same thing, but maybe next week I'm doing something different. But we want to know whether 6 months down the line, whether people are still making changes. And we're doing it using an internet-based format. And you can go to the Food for Me website and find out about the study. So as Mike said, we're interested in different levels or types of personalization. So in the proof of principle study, we're going to test the effectiveness of offering personalized dietary analysis. In many ways, this is the one which is easiest because we have the richest evidence base on which to develop that personalization. At level 2, we're going to combine that personalized dietary advice with phenotypic analysis. I'll explain more about that later. And then level 3 will be diet, phenotype, and genomic analysis. So as we build up through levels 1, 2, and 3, we're getting more and more sophisticated bases for the personalization. And of course, from a scientific perspective, we need to have a control group. And our control group are the so-called level 0, the people who will get non-personalized dietary advice, the one-size-fits-all type of dietary advice. We're going to make measurements at baseline and at 6 months, so we'll know whether people have been able to make sustained changes. We'll also collect some information in the middle at month 3 to see whether people made changes but then went back to their old ways again. So hopefully it's a strong scientific design. So our first challenge was, well, what is the one-size-fits-all dietary advice which is suitable for Europe? Because what we discovered when we began to look at this was that there was generalized advice in each of the individual European countries, but not for the whole of Europe. So we've had to integrate information from all of those countries to produce the non-personalised, the general dietary advice which is suitable for the whole of Europe. And a quarter of the people will be randomised. I should say this is randomised, so they don't choose, they're randomised to that particular advice. So let's then get into the details of the personalised dietary advice. So what we'd like to know here is, if we have information on what people are already choosing, can we help them to modify those choices to produce healthier choices? And this gives me an opportunity to explain how we're collecting the information via the internet. So people join the study by going to the Food For Me website and signing up. There's a little button you can click if you're interested in joining the study, and that takes you into it. And then there's sign up available in 6 languages, representing the languages used in the 7 countries where the study's running. People are given a login, and then that allows them to start entering some information about themselves. We had to do this rather carefully because there are all sorts of ethical issues about doing studies in volunteers, and as Ulf may refer to later, we met new ethical issues about doing these studies through the internet that we wouldn't have had if we were doing the studies face-to-face, which is the conventional way. So initially we consent people to collect some basic information. And that allows us to do some analysis of the sorts of people who are interested in personalised nutrition. And you'll see later that we have now quite a large number of people who have joined or shown interest in personalised nutrition through Food For Me, and about whom we know quite a lot. We have some screening questionnaires to find out information about the individual, and that allows us then to select those people who meet our criteria. So a good example would be they need to be adults. So we're not allowing children into the study, so if they've said they're only 13, they're out. Okay? We're also not recruiting people who would be vulnerable to changes in diet, so we're not recruiting people who are pregnant or who are planned to become pregnant during the time of the study, that kind of thing. Once we've got people who meet our criteria, we consent them again to go to the next level of detail. And the next level of detail involves collecting information on their diet. And for this we've used modified food frequency questionnaire. The beauty of a food frequency questionnaire is it's very easily adapted to web-based technologies. And people essentially go down the list of foods, identify how often they eat them, and just click the button. That's all they have to do. But we need to know how much they ate, because in the kinds of solutions that both Mike and Joe referred to, it might not be that they choose this food rather than that food, but they might eat a bit more of this one or a bit less of that one. So we need to know how much they eat. So we include in the online FAQ pictures of food portion sizes, and people can click the one which is most appropriate to them. And for some types of food, here's an example for bread, they can choose the type of bread that they would normally use. So we get quite a rich set of information about the types of food and how much. We also collect information on items which are not in the FAQ. So other things that would be relevant to offering dietary advice, such as fried foods or taking supplements. And we have standardized ways of collecting all of those data. Okay, from those dietary data, we can then develop guidelines or personalized advice which helps that individual move from where they are now to a healthier diet. So level 2 adds to that dietary information phenotypic advice. So again, a quarter of the volunteers are randomized to the LIM, which collects phenotypic data. So we're asking people to record quite a lot of detail about themselves, and this is self-reported. So we'd like to know how tall they are, how much they weigh, what their waist circumference is, hip, thigh circumference. How can you do that at home? Well, we need to do it in a way which is fairly reliable and as robust as possible. So we've created videos, online videos, so a bit like YouTube videos. So you want to know how to weigh yourself? Watch our video. How do you measure your thigh circumference? Look at the video. Okay. So we collect all that information and they upload it onto the web. Mike already mentioned that we're doing collecting information also on physical activity. We're working with Philips using the little device that you see on the top right of the screen. So this allows us to collect objectively, minute by minute information on physical activity. We're also using self-report questionnaire. We're using an international physical activity questionnaire so that we can see how useful a much simpler tool, IPAC, would be compared with the more expensive and more sophisticated Philips tool. We're collecting that data all the way through the 6 months, and we're giving people feedback on their physical activity 5 times during the study. And you'll see in the bottom right of the screen an example of the way in which we organize the feedback, which is the same kind of model as Mike described for diet, where we can put people in the boxes, the red, the orange, or the green boxes, how well they're doing. We're also collecting information on metabolic and nutritional markers, and we're doing this using the dried blood spot system. When we first talked about this when we were planning Food for Me, I think quite a lot of us had a lot of skepticism about how easy this would be and how practical it would be. And one of the first things we did was to get a few researchers to try, and I was one of the people who tried. And actually, it was remarkably easy and not so painful. I thought the pricking of the finger and dabbing it would be awful, but actually it wasn't too bad at all. And I could fill the 5 blood spots from one prick, so that was fine. So those are then sent out to the individuals. They post them back to the study centres, and the study centres pass them on to the analytical labs. And we're measuring a wide range of metabolic and nutritional markers in those dried blood spots. And Mike showed you that really this technology now is sufficiently well advanced that we can be pretty confident that we're getting good data. So level 3 then takes us to add genomic advice to the dietary and phenotypic advice. And again, 1/4 of the volunteers will be randomized to this limb. We're collecting the DNA using the buccal swab system, which is pretty much painless and collects sufficient DNA to allow us to look at a wide range of genetic variants. In the whole of Food for Me, we're going to be looking at 32 different nutrient-related genetic variants. But for the purposes of the proof of principle study, we have selected the top 5 nutrient-related genetic variants on which we're going to offer genotype-related dietary advice. And that required actually an enormous amount of work to review the literature to identify where there was at least reasonable evidence that that particular genetic variant would benefit, people with that genetic variant would benefit from a particular type of nutritional advice. The final part of the study design is the question of whether more intensive intervention and more feedback will result in more compliance and greater or more appropriate behavior change. So what we're doing there is that we're dividing people into low and high intensity groups. So the low intensity group are the people who we collect information baseline, month 3 and month 6. But the high intensity people get feedback at month 1, month 2, month 3, and month 6. So more feedback and more help with making changes. So for example, they have access to recipe databases and a whole lot of other information which we hope might help them to change their diet. So one of the big challenges is how do we use all the data that we now have on these people and to translate this into personalised nutritional advice. And it's a big challenge. There are many, many bits in the jigsaw where all these components of diet, 136 I think it is, dietary factors. We have many things we've measured on the phenotype, physical activity, anthropometric measurements, blood metabolites and so on. And we have all the genetic variants. So how do we put all of those together in evidence-based, systematic ways which allow us to produce realistic nutritional advice? And this is not a trivial undertaking. It's not at all easy. And we've been working very hard across Food for Me to develop algorithms for decision trees. This is an example. So imagine that you are looking just one gene, the FTO gene, which is linked to adiposity. So people who have the risk variant of FTO are a bit fatter, a bit heavier than other people. So first of all, we get information on whether or not they carry the risk allele. The second thing is, are they already fat? So we need to know whether they're overweight or not, or they're underweight. The next thing is, where is the fat in their body? Is it around the middle? So that's where waist circumference comes in. And then we need to know whether they're being physically active. So now we have another set of variables. And from that, then we produce a whole series of possible advice based on each of those pieces of information. And for this one item, we have 324 possible different nutritional advice. Now, as Mike said, it starts to get into huge numbers and can become very impractical. But we need to be able to do this so that the researchers in each of the 7 centres could give similar advice to individuals in their country. So if you're based in Athens and you have a Greek participant, they're getting the same advice as they would in Germany or in Poland. So we're using these to guide the researchers who are interacting with the participants online in giving standardized advice. So the proof of principle study is underway. It's work in progress. And what I'm going to do now in the next few slides is to tell you where we are with the study. So that was the design. Where have we got to? We have screened over 5,500 people. So more than 5,500 people have gone onto the website, they've given consent, and they've entered data about themselves. And that's the data which we've used then to find out whether they're suitable to go into the study. Of the people who have shown interest in Food for Me, so these almost 5,500 people, nearly 60% were female and over 40% were male. The gender ratios are a little bit different in the different countries, as you can see, but in general, slightly more women than men showed interest. We're also interested in the age of the people who would be attracted to personalised nutrition. So this shows you, for men and women, across all the adult age ranges, the proportion of people who signed up to the study. And you can see that up to the age of 50, it's pretty much the same. There's little difference in the number of people who joined the study, but over the age of 50, then it starts to drop off. And beyond the age of 70, we have 2 men, I think it is, and 1 woman who have joined the study. Okay. So, pretty popular up to the age of 50, slightly less popular beyond the age of 50. If we look across all the countries, because we wondered about whether it was different in different places, you'll see that overall it's pretty similar. Slightly older in the Netherlands than, for example, in the UK. But overall, the mean age was just over 40. We're also interested in the type of people who signed up. So would it be people who were a bit plump and who were looking for advice on how to lose weight? So we looked at the BMI status. BMI is a measure of adiposity. And you can see that about 50% of the people were normal weight. bit over 30% of them were overweight, and just over 15% were obese. So not too different actually from the general population. And you can see that from these recent data on overweight and obesity across the EU. And in fact, the people that signed up to the study were just slightly less obese than Europeans in general. The countries that I've got the boxes around are the countries that we're recruiting in. So we screened 5,401 people, and of those we randomized to the study 1,528. So roughly 28% of the people who signed up to the study were suitable to take part in it. Of those people, we still have in the study almost 1,400. So we've only had 131 drop out. So 8.5% dropout. We estimate up to 20% dropout. So we're, I think, doing pretty well so far. So the people in the study are the people that we've randomized to the 4 boxes and in whom we're offering personalized nutrition at one of the 4 levels. This shows you how the recruitment is going in all the different countries. Our target was to get 220 recruited in each of the 7 countries, and apart from Poland, we've achieved that recruitment. Poland is a little bit behind, but not too far behind. The male-female ratio of the recruits is not very different from the male-female ratio of the people who showed interest. 58% female, 42% male. Again, the age of the recruits is pretty similar. On average, 40 across the 7 countries, with the females being just slightly younger than the males who have joined the study. When we designed the study, we had quite a lot of debate about whether we should set targets to recruit people in different age groups, or male, female, and so on. And we thought that we might look at people above and below 45 as a kind of arbitrary cutoff. And what we've found is that of the people less than 45, is 59% of our recruits. We've got 41% over 45. So we've got a pretty good representation of the adult age range. One of our big questions was, would people actually do what we asked them to do? And could we deliver an intervention of this type using this very innovative approach, web-based, with everything being done remotely? So I'll give you here some examples of compliance. First of all, with the nasty one, the blood collection. And we've got almost 98% of the people who were able and willing and managed to deliver the dried blood spots. Physical activity compliance is not much worse, 97%. So 47 participants haven't provided us with physical activity data, but the other 96% have. And buccal swabs to get the DNA, 99% plus have done that. So in practical terms, we seem to be able to deliver this intervention using the innovative approach. So how plump were the people who joined the study? Well, 53% were normal weight and 16% were obese. So we've got a good range of people from normal weight through overweight and obese. And we, of course, will be able to see whether we're able to tailor advice relevant for those different population groups. Now I'm going to come back to 2 of the novel aspects of the Food for Me proof of principle study which need a little bit of analysis. And first of all, the issue of doing things through the internet. And the second one is this remote collection of data and biological samples. And these raise questions about reliability. So are the data that we're collecting good data? As good as we could get with a conventional kind of study. So there were two major issues which come into this. First of all, there's the identity issue. Is the person who signed up and says that they're a 38-year-old woman really a 38-year-old woman? Okay, so we need to know from a scientific perspective whether the people who joined the study really were who they said they were. And the second one was, would the measurements that they collected be reliable measurements? And we needed that for both ethical issues and also for scientific integrity. So what we decided was that we would address this by having an additional validation study. So embedded within the proof of principle study is a 10% validation sample, where we will examine both identity and measurements. So what we're doing is inviting 10% of the recruits in all of the 7 countries to come into their local centre, and we'll examine identity in 2 ways. First of all, just face-to-face. So we have a look, there's a guy, looks male, so we get identity that way. But more important, we collect a second buccal swab and we redo the genotypic analysis. And of course, DNA doesn't lie, and we will know whether they are the genetic variants that were there in the original sample that that person sent in. And the second thing is we will repeat some of the simple measurements that the people did at home. We'll measure their height, we'll measure their weight, and see how reliable they were at providing that kind of information. So we're up and running, and we've recruited virtually all the people that we need to recruit, and we are on track to complete the study. This shows you when the people will finish in each of the 7 countries. Most of them will finish by the end of this calendar year, and the others early in 2014.